Hey, this is Grace, the Dove Lady, and I'm going to try something I haven't done before. I'm going to read something to you and tell you something about my experience with light. Now, this is just a little LED light. Now, when I first started seeing things in light, it wasn't in the LED light. It was just outside on a bright day with the sun shining, or in a brightly lit room. I would see these little squiggly things. And I've been trying to draw a little bit an example of what some of them looked like. They look all kinds of ways, but mostly they'll be sometimes entangled. There'll be a whole wad of them, kind of like that. They're not the most beautiful things in the world, but I would see them and wonder what in the world was I seeing. And when I learned to look at the LED light, I would squint my eyes and I would turn the light just directly right into me, like you see me right there where it's directly shining right in my face. And then I would squint my eyes, mostly my right eye, and just allow a little bit of that light into my eye. And usually there was some moisture in my eye, a tear or something like that. It helps to have a little moisture in your eye because it gives it a veil lookingness to it. And then, let me show you, I do have a picture. Oh, more pictures of how it all started looking. Okay, here's one drawing that I made. See, this is my side of my face, but I don't see my face. I see two flaps that are right here, like that open and close with the closing and opening of my eye, my physical eye. And there started being color come from my eye. Little bubbles of color would collect on those two flaps that I learned to call my third eye. And they would just amass there a little bit until they got to be quite a few of them. Then they would turn loose and go into the big orb that this light makes when you squint your eyes and look at it in a way through kind of moisture. And it was real hard because it looks like a big orb at first, but a moving one. And you have to more or less train your eye to make it be still long enough that you can look at the stuff that's moving around in it. And the stuff that moves around in it can be on the outside of this light, and then move into the light. It's kind of hard to explain it, but it's like we're surrounded by all these little circles and tubes and stringy things and big long things like these I show here. These long tubes seem to be filled with smaller tubes inside them, like fiber optics. I could see that too, but they looked much larger than all this little stuff. Anyway, eventually I was able to film it, but not get it exactly like my eyes saw it. I would see in my film of the orbs much that was similar. I'm going to turn this down now so I can read to you something. I was explaining to a friend how to look at this light. And then I was reading to him something from a Ken Carey book called The Starseed Transmissions. And I think what I'm looking at is an invisible world that is intelligent and that we are maybe a part of or still are a part of, or once were a part of, I don't know. But right now, we're too identified with form. But we fell from a state of knowing that we were more than our form, where we could go in and out of form. But now we're sort of stuck in form, like in a prison. And they use the word Nagwal to mean everything that cannot be named. This is the creator that surrounds creation like a sea surrounds a fish. Out of this Nagwal you are called many times to dwell, for the space of a relationship in its opposite, the tonal. That's our world. The tonal is everything that can be named. It is the imaginary world of God in which all apparent differences exist. It is the playground of what is. The tonal draws all of its sustenance from the Nagwal. This that I'm seeing, I think, is the Nagwal. It cannot exist apart from the Nagwal. While the Nagwal is a dynamic yet steady state of rest, the tonal or manifest physical universe is continuously flashing on and off. This oscillation occurs in all things manifest, from the smallest subatomic particle to the greatest galaxy. All of us, and the one speaking to Ken Carey is a being that gave him a whole lot of what he writes in this book. I don't know that you would say he was an angel, but he's talking about all of us, and he's including himself. Angels, humans, anything that can be named are only in form one half of the time. The other half of the time we exist in the totality of being. This totality of being that we have been calling the Nagwal has also been called God the Father. It is the life of God the Father that animates all creation. It is this reality that all healthy creatures oscillate back and forth to and exist in half the time. In this reality, we do not exist in time or space, for we can name these. They are both features of the manifest universe. From this spaceless, timeless state, we derive all energy, blessing, and nourishment. This always holds true even for you in the fallen condition. The difference is that in the fallen state, you are not aware of this process and therefore unable to participate in it consciously. By forfeiting your ability to oscillate in consciousness between the two realities in which you dwell, you are restricted to an awareness of just the tonal, just the material, conceptual world. You still receive your nourishment from the light of the Nagwal, but no longer directly, only through animals, plants, and minerals. You are unconscious of being and conscious only of form. How did you lose your ability to shift your awareness from deity to identity, from form to metaform? How did you lose God consciousness? How did you fall into the illusion of separation? I will tell you. It was through a simple lack of faith. It was through a loss of confidence in the absolute perfection of the universal design. This was brought about by the entry of a single factor into your existence, fear. The serpent in the garden, the devil in history. Through a subtle process of reasoning, this being encouraged you to move in a pattern of activity that has come to be called original sin. It was a pattern of activity that you were never designed to move in. With a clever and subtle lie, you were convinced to not exactly stop trusting in God, but to stop trusting exclusively in God. The moment you did this, your consciousness began to shift from God-centeredness to self-centeredness, and for the first time, you became more aware of your identity in form than of your identity in God. This shift in awareness was minimal at first, but enough to begin what was to become a long spiral downward through denser and denser levels of energy bondage and restraint. For Satan, your tempter, is the materializing influence who in its right place is responsible for the bonding of energy in the creation of matter. As you began to focus more and more upon your identity and form, you began thinking in terms of defending that form with unnecessary and cumbersome ego structures. It became harder for you to avoid identifying with your experience. You began to carry over past patterns of behavior, response, into new relationships. This made you less effective in those relationships because you were no longer fully present, no longer using the fullness of your potential. You were beginning to build up around you energized thought structures that imprisoned you. You were drawn by simple gravitational attraction to those realms of space where energy was in the process of being bonded, where matter was being created. Particles of physical substance began to gather around the magnetic lines of your thought structures, and you began to identify with denser and denser levels of physical expression. The process went on for a long while before you actually found yourself in any kind of physical garden. When you did, you had already fallen a long way from your original state of grace, but you were still functioning on a level of awareness enough above and beyond your present condition to give rise to all the myths and legends of a physical paradise. The physical Garden of Eden lasted for many centuries on Earth time before the momentum of the materializing processes caused you to rely so much upon the physical senses that you became cut off from the direct nourishment of divine light. So, there's more to this, and I read this book. It's called The Starseed Transmission. You can find it in the, I will give it in the description bar, the link to it. This world that we live in is an imaginary world. Nothing that happens here is real, including our own selves. We're part of it. We're part of the illusion. We're a recording of happenings which are unreal yet recorded nevertheless. And why? Because it's our training ground. It's full of tests and trials to see how we will react. Our biggest lesson we came here to learn is how to be gods. Now, it's my opinion that the God of the Bible is a true account right at the beginning of the description of God until the record got contaminated with an imposter God. I think it is true that God looked at all he made and called it good, just as it says in the Bible. So much that is written in the Bible is wrong. But before it went wrong, it described a God who was omnipotent, omnipresent, and omnipotent. And God is all those things, which means all-knowing, all-powerful, and everywhere present. God did this thing in creation called calling what is not as though it were, a simple let there be, and it was before him. We're here to learn this as well, so that what has been stopping us from doing the greater works that Jesus said we would do. Well, I have this theory that we don't do them because we think that we're powerless, that our words don't mean anything. And we call things like our eyes see them, not remembering that this is the illusion we're looking at. And when we do that, we're being fooled over and over to give power so it will continue to be the illusion that we're looking at. Like right now, there's a lot of people that are really upset with others who don't think like them about the politics of today. And a lot of this is over Trump and what all is going on in the government. And I see a lot of hate and a lot of people who want to just hate the other side because they just can't understand what's going on. And all the while, everybody that wants to hate is wrong, because that is not how things change. That's how things stay the same. When you don't like a thing and you think it is true, you're creating it to continue to be true because you believe it to be true. You don't call what is not as though it were. You don't love the enemy, like Jesus said, when you're hating on someone. Now, there are some people who think we should hate everyone who is for Trump. Well, I would have to hate my sisters, and I refuse to do that. I think they're wrong in how they believe about him, but I will not give in to hating them and not wanting anything to do with them. That is not going to do anything to make anything better. I can understand that they're caught up in the illusion, and I see them as, well, I see people who think Trump is doing good as being a lot of times Christian people who I thought were caring about the lessons that Jesus taught us about loving one another and forgiving one another and loving our enemy. But they're so willing to hate the people who are refugees and the homeless and the people who are saying, let's do something about climate, about the climate changes. And we can. We can do less pollution. We can do more than we're doing. We can clean up our rivers and lakes and oceans. But we're too busy hating on one another, and it's getting us nowhere. It's kind of like, I was thinking of when Jesus was on a ship and everything was, there was a storm raging and the sea was threatening the little ship that it would sink. And he was asleep. And the disciples went to him and woke him up and said, we're gonna perish. That's not how Jesus saw it. When he woke up, he saw what was going on. And he said, peace, be still to the waters. And they obeyed him. We can do that sort of thing. But not if we hate whatever it is that we think is causing the trouble. We won't have that power within us to use our words to call what is not as though it were if we have given over our love of the to hate the enemy. We're here to learn to love the enemy. That's how you disarm them. That doesn't mean you have to love what they're doing that you think is wrong. But you don't have to demonize them. Sometimes I see things posted on my Facebook feed where people are really demonizing one party or the next. Some are demonizing Trump and some are demonizing liberals. And I don't take any of it personally. I just think they're barking up the wrong tree when they want to give in to hate. All that is saying is that, yes, this is true, what we see. This storm is going to crash our ship. It's given power to the storm. It's saying, this is real. This is not the illusion. It's real. We're going to die. The truth is, even if we die, we don't really die. Because we can't really die we're spirit, and spirit just has one life experience after another. We're trying to wake up here and remember that we're love, and remember what love can do. But love cannot do it while it's engaged in hating. I'll train this on my little cat. I'm living now in Oregon, and I'll show you this thing I made right there. It's very lonely here in Oregon because I live out in the woods, and it's kind of like a table. But I'm going to get a big piece of glass to set over the top so it will have a surface that is solid. It's the vector equilibrium, and I've got it all wrapped with this gold ribbon. I also have a cat now. There he is, a little rascal, and a dog. If anyone has any suggestion what to do for a dog that has an ear problem, let me know. I've taken her to the vet and gotten the medicine, spent the money, and it didn't cure the ear problem. She itches inside of her ear and shakes her head a lot. And she has an eye problem as well. I got her from the pound. You see, well, you can't really tell. The light's not good enough. But anyway, I'm just working, trying to make videos again. I got into a time of not feeling very good at all. And so I didn't do much of anything except lay around. Only now I'm starting to feel myself again and starting to want to make more videos and make friends that way. That's practically the only way I make them, because I don't go out and socialize much. So any comment you want to give me is welcome. I love hearing from you. I'm going to explore this, looking at this subatomic world even more. And here's a picture of what that third eye flap looks like to me when I see it outside my body, when I see all these things. I know it's all real weird. It doesn't make you popular with your family or even your friends to have some kind of ability like this, because they just think you're crazy. That makes you a very lonely person too, because people have an attitude about what they think about you. But nevertheless, I will be true to who I am, and I like me. I'm learning to like me more and more every day. And I like living here in Oregon. It's a little bit cold though. I have to make a fire, burn wood to keep this house really warm. So this is the Dove Lady, and I'm about to use up all my time here. This is kind of a haphazard video, but it's been a while since I made one at all, and I'll get better at it, and I'll show you some of my latest orb pictures. I've been still taking pictures of orbs in the light that show all these things in them. So I will let you go now. Over and out for now. Bye-bye.